Coming up on this episode.
But the road rage stuff, I don't, I'm glad we did this because you give me a lot of different things to think about.
Well, that's awesome.
It's the things that I know I need to think about, but I don't always want to, if that makes sense.
West of the 7-3, eastern, there is a large urban sprawl.
Low pass, show of force confirmed, and the enemy.
Outside the wire.
Guns good.
Welcome to episode 6 of Outside the Wire podcast. The whole purpose of this podcast, again, is to get like-minded individuals, guys who have gone outside the wire and have experienced life in combat and are now back in the civilian world and learning how to deal, cope, and kind of live through some of the things that we deal with, having been combat veterans. And today I have a new guest with us, owner of K-Bar Soap Company. Chris is with us, and this is my first time having a video Skype interview. So Chris, this is all on you to do a good job because you're the first. So here we go. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it. I hope I don't screw it up.
That's right. We'll air this on no matter what happens. So quick introduction. Tell me a little bit about your company, K-Bar Soap.
Make all natural soap for men, shaped like grenades. Highly inspired from my time spent in the Marine Corps. They all got cool names that kind of associate with the scent. Do beard products, the whole bit. But yeah, try to give men something that's actually good for their skin and make them want to use it, make it look like a grenade, have that visual appeal first, and then and go from there. But yeah, it's that's what I do in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And so how's things going? The business growing?
Good, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a couple big things in the works. Good call tomorrow. I don't want to say who it's with, but don't want to jinx it. But if that goes well, then it may take it to the next step. We'll see. Got my fingers crossed, and we'll see.
No, that's awesome. Well, congratulations and good luck with that call tomorrow. So today we wanted to talk about road rage. It's I think something that a lot of us all deal with. Having for a lot of us, we spend a lot of time in country on roads, and there was always a threat while you're driving around in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever you deployed to. And I think you get kind of amped up and you bring a lot of those same feelings, fears, hypervigilance, what have you, all back to driving here back and at home. And so I wanted to go back and forth a little bit, share a couple stories. I know I have several, you have some, but I'll let you go ahead and start off. Like, did you notice a difference right away when you got home, or did it kind of gradually get worse, or what was your experience with road rage? And don't mind me, I'm going to crack my beer.
Go right ahead. I don't necessarily know. I feel like for me, somehow just in my specific geographical location in upstate South Carolina, the more traffic, the more people that have come to this area. We get a lot of transplants from up north, not saying anything bad. But a lot of people try to move south, so it's a lot of different people, a lot of different driving styles and everything. So had I lived in some rural area, not a lot of traffic, probably wouldn't have got worse. But I actually think mine's gotten a little worse as more people have moved into the area, don't necessarily drive the same. So I wish I could say mine's gotten better, but I did notice a huge difference even from some of the experiences I had in Iraq. And then you bring them home. It's always point A to point B as fast as you can possibly go. Hate being stuck in traffic. If you were stuck in traffic in Iraq, you jumped the curbs, did whatever you had to do to go somewhere, right? Like, anytime I get stuck in traffic, IEDs weren't big on the invasion, right? So we knew there was a threat out there, but they were mostly surface laid mines. So the IED stuff didn't come until 04, 05 when they started getting real good with those. 03, it wasn't that big of an issue for us, even as engineers. A couple scares with it. So seeing the trash on the side of the roads and stuff like that affects a lot of people doesn't really affect me that much, believe it or not. What affects me is that anytime I get stuck in traffic, I feel like I'm trapped.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I avoid interstates. I avoid anything like that. If I feel like I don't have an egress route, that's where it still gets me. And then that's whenever everything gets heightened and somebody starts driving aggressively, then I'm like, well, I could do that too, right?
Yeah,
So then it
it's
just
time,
goes
time
on.
to,
Yeah. And one of the main ones that I don't know, attribute a lot of that to, we were turning back into bivouac site. We had left Baghdad. We were on our way back down to Kuwait, and we bivouacked at one of these just horrible places. And I was a Humvee driver, so obviously I got the fortune. I was able to drive around a lot there, and I was taking a left in our bivouac site. And I know if you've ever been to Iraq, you've seen the little piece of shit Toyotas with orange front and rear quarter panels and with the cabs, right?
yeah, yep.
I was turning left, and he was going to pass me on the left, and he hit. I had my elbow out the arm of the door of the Humvee, and the windshield of the car hit my elbow, and he almost ripped the front fender off the Humvee. And so I freaked out. If it wasn't for my squad leader, there was no flight in that one. It was all fight. I had in my mind I was going to go execute these cats, and thank God for him. But that's where somebody hit me, and I was ready to put a bullet in them. Being perfectly honest, like because of where we're at, everything we'd just been through. If it wasn't for him, it would have been bad news. So I think I can attribute most to that and to that one instance, to be perfectly honest, because it got so far that it could have ended, very poorly.
Yeah,
I could have been in
sure.
a lot of trouble for it. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's the one that I feel like sticks out with me the most. It causes most of my problems here is just people that drive erratically, don't know what they're doing. And the distracted driving has gotten so much worse over the years. And you rode motorcycles, right?
Oh yeah.
That's when mine got a lot worse. People don't see you. And I didn't have as big of a death trap as you did with the crotch rockets and stuff.
Yeah.
I just had a Harley, was trying to putt, but go up and down the interstate, and people just, man, I don't know. That's when my road rage, I feel like, got a lot worse because they just don't see you and don't pay attention enough. So I don't know. It's hit or miss. Try to do better with it.
Yeah. Well, for me, so I wasn't a driver, I was a gunner. And so I had that bird's eye view of everything. And I was in '04, like you were talking about, and into '05. And so the IEDs were pretty significant. In fact, one hit us was a bongo truck. I'm sure you guys saw those while you were over there, the blue little Isuzu snub-nosed trucks. They had filled, I don't know, the engineers, after they went back and scoped out the detonation site, they estimated it was somewhere around 17155 rounds in the back of this truck. And they were probably 6 feet away from my truck when they hit us, and they pushed us to the other side of the road. So it was a pretty significant blast, but we got, I was driving, and you see a little red wire laying across the road. And at first you're like, it's just trash. But then there was like that little voice in your head and you're like, we need to stop and check that out. So we stopped and checked it out, and it was a daisy chain IED with like 15 155 rounds buried along the whole road. So we definitely saw a lot of IEDs while I was there. And I think that the IEDs definitely contributed. I had this weird, after getting hit enough times, and especially the one that injured me, you have this weird sense of anticipation of getting hit again. And that was a really hard feeling or sense to shake after I got back. But I think also we were taught to have a very aggressive posture while we were over there. And the more aggressive you could be, the more safe you were. Because if you were driving faster, if you were getting in and out of situations, you were a hard target. And I think being a hard target and that hypervigilance definitely translates back to when you're sitting in traffic. A, you feel like a soft target when you're stuck. And B, you feel out of control. Like you said, you feel trapped. And I think those are two very real feelings and emotions that we deal with. But at the same time, I think it's really a good idea to start considering, the reality of Iraq and Afghanistan are one thing, and being back home and either driving in Boston or driving in North Carolina, you don't have IEDs. Chances are your threat level is considerably low. And I think it's important to just kind of reaffirm to yourself that what the reality actually is. But I wanted to know if there were any moments that you had while you were back stateside where you thought the IEDs or sorry, your road rage became to a point where you were like, I need to like start paying attention to this a little too much, or this is going to escalate past the point where I feel comfortable or something bad's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Typically one of the biggest things that gets me, we do a lot of driving. So I drive up to New Jersey. I drive, around. So a lot of time on interstates, and, people that can't hold inconsistent speeds just piss me off. Driving slow in the fast lane, like get out of my way, whatever.
Yeah.
So I have a huge problem with that. And a couple times, I mean, I have these impulses where I want to follow people, and like, oh really, you're getting off at an exit, like I want to go confront these people. But thank God most of the time my wife's with me, and I'll tell you, having my kids has calmed down a lot of the stuff that I did before, because I don't want to set such a poor example. But sometimes it hits me before I even realize what's going on. It's just the instant reaction, because I've gotten so used to it. But most of the time it's all ended with cooler heads prevailing. I count to 10, I do whatever, but typically that's what'll happen. And I'll not too much confrontations. Haven't had any guns pulled on me or anything like that. I hear some stories about people, waving guns and stuff at each other on the interstates, but never had to do any of that. No one specific thing that I went and, confronted anybody about. It just usually, I don't know, ends with a few cuss words and some flipping of birds, which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's harmless. Not going to get arrested for it. And I don't know if it makes me feel better, them feel better, or whatever, but never really escalated to the point. My old man's followed people off the exits before and confronted them. And maybe I get it honest. Maybe it wasn't so much the Marine Corps too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that just compounded everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, any direct, what do you?
I've had more stories than I could probably even remember. And it was definitely getting worse. It was, I mean, I was living, in the Midwest, Oklahoma, when I first got out, and then I moved out to New England, and the like you said, the driving up in Boston, going from like a rural area to a metropolitan area, especially Boston, it was a culture shock to me for sure. And just the amount of traffic, I had never sat in traffic for that long before, and feeling trapped was a huge part of it. And also, like you said, I started developing this attitude as if everyone on the road was an idiot. And you also start, well, it's funny. I think it's funny that you bring that up, because I wanted to say the same thing. It's funny how the rules of the road apply to everyone else, but yourself. And you justify doing 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limits, and whenever everyone else is speeding and it's causing you, some issues, then it's their fault. Or if, you're driving down the left lane and someone's in your way and you want them to get out of the way, then they're an asshole. But if you're in the left lane and someone's up behind you and you don't want to get out of the way, then they're the asshole. It's always they're the asshole.
There is a lot of deflection.
Yes. So, I was carpooling with a coworker, and she was like the sweetest lady. And looking back, it was just amazing how much, how blind I was to, like, you talk about being situational awareness and how important that is. The only situational awareness I had was my car and the road and the threat of the other drivers, but I wasn't considering the fact that I had a passenger in my car that was probably terrified at my driving. And so I get, I'm driving through Boston, and I get this car, and they basically are, in and out of the way. And they just, I don't even know what we did, but we escalated to the point where, we're like brake checking each other, passing each other, cutting each other off. And I'm like, I roll down the window. I'm halfway hanging out the car, yelling at them to pull over. And all of a sudden I just kind of look over, and this woman that's in the car with me is like got a death grip on the oh shit bar, and her face is white as a ghost.
Oh my gosh, you scared the hell out.
Yeah, at least say she didn't carpool with me for a while after that. But I mean, I was literally like gonna get on a completely different highway and not even go back. We were headed home, and it was probably like 10 o'clock at night, and instead of staying on the highway to go home, they were heading off towards Maine. And I was about to get on this highway and head towards Maine to chase these guys. And she's like, I actually would like to go home. And so I realized that like that rage it was legit rage, was clouding, my peripheral and my ability to see like what situation I was actually in. And it was always something stupid that spurred it. I had another situation where I had this car in the left lane and they wouldn't get out of my way. So I flashed the brights, nothing. So then I throw the lights on, just leave the high beams on and sit right on their ass, nothing. So then I start flashing them, like just strobing them with my high beams and nothing. So then I get out of the way, I go around them and then they get up on my butt. And now they're flashing, do the same thing to me. And I'm like, all right, cool. You want to escalate this? Let's take this off the side of the road. And so I pull over, they pull over. I find this little spot in an alley. And I'm like, I mean, my brain is going to a very dark place at this point. And I put my truck in park. I hop out. I rip my shirt off. I mean, like, I am ready to go.
Go time.
And these two guys jump out of their truck and it was funny because I've been in enough scuffles to read people. The driver gets out and he's ready. He's like about my size. He's like, yeah, let's do this. And the passenger is like just sitting by the car. He's like, I'm just going to be a spectator on this one.
I'm going to hang back here.
Yeah. And so he gets all up in my face and we're just going at it. And all of a sudden I had this like moment of clairvoyance or just like sanity hit me. And I just started laughing and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm ready. I'm in my late 30s. I've got a wife and kid at home and I'm going to show up at home bloody and bruised because some dude wouldn't get out of the left lane. And this guy's like, are we fighting or not? And I just couldn't stop laughing. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. Like I was kind of feeling like it, like I wanted to fight, but nah, this just seems like a really dumb thing to get in a fight over. And I was like, I'm sorry. I probably had a lot to do with that, but I'm going to hop in my truck and head home. You have a nice night. And he was just kind of like, what? Like it just totally, yeah, it just totally took him off. He was, caught off guard and he didn't know what to do. But I just had that moment of like, this is enough. Like I can't, I'm way too old. I have too much riding. I have a good job. I got a nice truck. I got a wife and kid at home. Like, why am I trying to start fights with complete strangers? Plus like, I live in, a state where you can carry, but when you go into Massachusetts and Boston, you can't. So I'm like, I'm driving and I don't have my sidearm on me at all. So I'm like, if I escalate this to the point where now I got somebody who might have a gun and I don't, I'm like, this is just goes against everything that I was trained on how to escalate force and the reason to escalate force. So I was like, yeah, it's got to stop. So I started talking to, I had been talking to a counselor, but for me, the counselor helped reinforce what obviously was already true. But the turning point for me wasn't necessarily something bad happened and I regretted it. And then I had to, sit in jail and think about it or something like that. But it was just, I realized that I was letting outside forces that I couldn't control affect me. And my wife made a really good point one time. She would, I would get right up on people and my truck was always bigger than everybody else's. And so I'm like, she's
headlights
like, you can't.
go right in the back window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, you don't need to teach everyone a lesson. And I'm like, yes, I do. They're all idiots and they need to be taught a lesson.
My job.
Yeah, it is. This is the reason I was put on this planet, is to teach everyone out here what the rules of the road actually are, and enforce it. But what I did realize was the reality of it is every person that I tailgated or flipped off or honked at or cut off, got in front of, just made a big scene about, what I actually realized was I didn't change their mind. They're not going to change their habits or how they drive because I flipped them off or cut them off. Like, I'm not
They're going to
making
think
any.
you're an asshole.
Yep, that's all they're going to do. And And I was like, so if I'm putting all this effort into trying to teach someone, but I'm not actually teaching them, all that effort's wasted. And so I started really like trying to think about like the reality of the situation. And what I realized is the only thing that was happening was I was getting myself worked up. Literally, that was the only thing that was happening. I was getting pissed off. I was making my day. So I was showing up to work pissed off. I was coming home pissed off. I was taking it out on my kids, and my wife's like, "Why are you so angry? You just walked in the door." And I'm like, "Well, this and this happened on the road." And she's like, "Well, how does that affect, or why should that affect me and your kids?" And so I just started realizing like I was creating all of this anger and rage and bringing it home or bringing it to work. And there was literally zero positive coming out of any of that. And so that was when I started deciding that it was time to really take a look at like, what am I doing and is it worth it? And it wasn't at all. None of it was worth it.
And it's usually not. I mean, but it's a good point, because when you let somebody else affect you to where you bring it home, and I've done it too. I'm guilty of that too. If you let somebody outside affect you, they don't even know they've affected you to that point. You just come home pissed off and take it out on everybody, and they just go home normal and just whatever. Yeah. I remember I talked to a counselor at one point about this, because it got to be a huge thing. And she said, just on your way home, just wait for that one. There's always going to be one, right? And whenever you see that one that pisses you off, she said, you're always going to find somebody on your way from point A to point B that pisses you off. And when you think about it, there's always somebody. If you look for them, there's always somebody that you can pick out that's driving like an idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter if you're going 5 miles down the road or 500, there's always somebody that'll piss you off. And she said, when you see that person, be like, there he is. Okay, cool. Let him go.
Yeah.
She said, if you do that, you let it go and you just keep going, right? You just try to find him. But once you find him, you point him out and just let it go.
There he is. That's a good, I like that, because you talk about, like, I've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, and I've talked about this with a lot of friends and counselors, and there's the difference between a reaction and a response. And a reaction, if you separate your brain and get into the science of how your brain works, you have your conscious and subconscious, your frontal lobe, all this stuff, your fight or flight, all these different things that happen in your brain, and it affects how you either respond or react. And if you have been reinforcing this behavior of any time you get on the highway, you're already amped up. You know it's going to happen. You know that someone's going to piss you off, and then your go-to is to escalate it or show how pissed off you are. Then you're solidifying that part of your reaction into your subconscious, and then inevitably you can't go into another situation like that and then expect yourself to do anything different, because that's basically what you've trained yourself to do. But like you said, if you go into a situation knowing you're going to get contact front, and you know that when you get contact, these are the steps you take, because you've already predetermined what you want your outcome to be. I want my outcome to be that I get to my place, my destination safely, and I want to have my threat level be at 0, and I don't want to be a dickhead to my wife and kids.
Exactly. And not be pissed off when I drive home. Like, you should be happy to walk in your door, right? And it shouldn't, I don't know. To me, it's a control issue. Like, I don't ever let my wife drive much, because I like being in control. Like, so if we ever go anywhere, I always drive. I rarely let her drive. I've started trying to ease up on that and let her drive, because it's a control thing. But I don't know if you have it, but
I literally get a cramp in my right calf when she's driving, because I'm like trying to push my foot through the floor to like trying to find the brake, and I show up and
what is that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's like, go faster past them to like. So I've tried. It's been an exercise in both patience and me trying to figure out how to make this work, letting her be in control. Like, I'm yielding some of that control. Right, here you go. But driving was always my thing, and she handles it a lot better. So maybe I've tried to give her more opportunities for me to learn from that, because she hasn't had the experiences I've had or anything like that. So it's kind of like, oh, whatever, let them go. I'm not gonna get mad at them. And I'm like, okay. So I'll use that as a training day, and I still just let her let her carry the torch a little bit doing that, but that did help me for a little while.
Well, you brought up a really good point. Another thing that I've been talking about on the podcast is dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. And what that is it's the idea of identifying areas that you want to improve, or identifying areas that you know that you are completely awful in. And what you do is you don't just accept the fact that you suck in that area, or that's your weakness, or this is what always happens. I always get in the truck and someone cuts me off. I get pissed off. This is just who I am. You dispense with that belief or image of yourself, and you decide what you actually want. Like, I want to be able to drive from here to work, and I don't care if someone does cut me off. I'm still going to show up to work okay, and to go about my day and not have this incident on the highway affect my day. Or I want to be able to ride in the car with my wife and not be amped up. Like, that's a normal thing to be. You should be able to, as long as your wife's a decent driver, you should be able to ride in the car with her. And what you just described is exactly what the dialectical behavior therapy is you decide what it is that you want to do, and then you expose yourself in bite-sized pieces, and you give yourself a very specific exposure time to whatever it is that you are struggling with. So if riding in the car with your wife is hard for you, then you say, hey, can we just do a real quick short errand where I know that we're going to not get into any hairy situations, and build up that confidence that I'm going to be okay with how you drive. And while you're there, kind of do a little after action report and realize that you say, hey, I noticed that when you're sitting on the highway and you're, riding in the right lane, I would prefer you to be in the left lane. That really amps me up. I don't know why. And you either address that and see if she can make a change, or you decide that when she's driving, it's her car. She's in control. I'm a passenger, and I'm along for the ride, and I just allow her to do her thing.
Bingo. That's how it'd have to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
No, it's all good stuff. And again, these are, when you take something, traumatic experience or a lifetime or a career in the military of training yourself to be a certain way, you can't expect that light switch to just be flipped off. You can't expect it to just be a different reality for you. But what you can expect is that you're in control and you can decide. And so for me, one of the big things for me that it just drove me insane is one of the things you brought up is people in the left lane not getting out of the way. And what I finally just told myself is, I got a fast truck. And if I want to go around these people, I can go around these people. And if I want to just go around the right, just look at them as look at it as an obstacle. Don't get so stuck on the fact that they need to get out of my way. And that's your reality. And anything short of that, you're going to come unglued. If you just say,
it frustrates me to no end, because it's usually a Prius. And I'm like, why are you even over here in the first place?
Yeah. No, I used to have an F-250. It was a diesel, and I could blow some pretty significant black smoke. So I would get right up and just slow down, spool the turbo, and then just dump coal on them. And again, I'm like,
that's the kind of stuff that does not help. No, but I don't know. I don't know why we do it. And I do think you hit on it. We both have talked about the control piece. And I think that is what we struggle being in control. If you feel like you have lost control of a situation, sometimes that's the difference between life and death. That's the way I look at it. And I'm not in control if I'm in traffic. Like, I feel like it's very hard to get over that. And not have that, I don't know, heightened sense of anything if you're not in control of a situation, which is horrible, because there's things that happen every day that are out of your control, but you like to think you could control them. But that's the hardest thing to let go. That's the hardest part of flipping that switch off. And it's very easy to flip on, but damn, turning it off has been, it's been a struggle.
So there's two, when I did this this 2-week course with some pretty intensive training situations with the counselors, and there was a whole team of counselors, and they taught you all kinds of stuff. They gave you binders of all this information. They made you take tests and quizzes, and do these behavior therapy exercises, and it was really cool. And a couple of things that they talked about was resilience, and so you can make it through a situation, but bounce back really quickly to your normal. Like if you want your normal to be just like, I'm chill, I'm peaceful, I'm happy, I'm good, I'm content. And you want to, you can peg into the red real quick, but you can come right back if you need to, but only allow yourself to peg into the red if it is a situation where you're responding to a threat. Like, and you look at those hypervigilance and this situational awareness and the ability to get super aggressive really quickly. If you look at it as a skill and you only use it in an escalation of force scenario, where I had 2 situations where this happened to me, and it was crazy that it happened to me twice, but I'm on the highway, 4 or 5 lanes wide, and all of a sudden I see headlights. And I see a car coming the wrong way at me on a highway. And it's happened to me twice. And the first time I had my truck and my wife and kids, and the kids are in the back sleeping, and my wife's in the front seat. And she sees, we both see it. It's the guy gets off or onto the highway on an off ramp, and he's like swerving. And I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he was just, got back, turned around. Next thing, and he went hard to the median to try to get out of everybody's way, but I'm in the left lane and I'm doing 75, 80 miles an hour, and I didn't have a lot of time to respond. But where my wife's freaking out, yelling, I'm just like, I gripped the wheel and I just watched him, and I accelerated, and I just waited for him to get close enough to where I knew that I could judge where he was going to be, and then at the last second swerve. And it was all calculated. And then I got right back in the lane, and I calmed down really quickly, and I didn't even really get that upset. I was like, oh, that was crazy, right? And I look over, my wife's like crying, she's freaking out. She's like, how did you do that? How did you even know what to do? And I was like, I don't know, I just did it. And she's like, no, she's like, that's not normal. I would have frozen. I probably would have crashed right into him. I would have just slammed on the brakes and caused an accident. And I was like, well, I guess that attributes to, I've learned several skills. I've taken plenty of driving courses, and, had plenty of driving experience while in the Marine Corps. Plus just, I spent a lot of time on the road. But having, that skill where you've been in a combat situation and you can trust yourself to make a calculated decision in the moment and not get too overtaken by fear. You just, work well under pressure. Like, that's a skill. And so you kind of take advantage of the skills and, don't try to lose that sharpness, but at the same time know that those are only appropriate in certain times. Like you don't do the same thing because you're playing chicken with somebody just because you're being a jerk. Right.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's that self-preservation mode too, though, right? I mean, you knew the potential outcome of hitting head on at 80, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to survive. You're in self-preservation. You got your family in there, and you're going to do whatever it takes. You stay calm, whatever. I think it kind of throws you into that mode. I mean, it would take a while. I don't know if it'd take me a while to get over it, because it would be like, man, did you just see that? But I could see reacting just like that, because we had how many instances like that in Iraq, close calls, whatever it may be. And I think we operate better like that under pressure. But the secret is just trying to keep the good and then getting rid of the bad that come with it, right? Right. That's the whole struggle has been. There's a ton of good that come from the Corps. There's a ton of good that come from combat with me. Even the appreciation for life. Like, I love hunting, but I used to, I don't know, kill random shit, like kill rabbits and do what, like, I don't know. This was before, when I was young. I don't want to do that anymore, right? I mean, I don't know. It's just my appreciation for life has skyrocketed because of that. I used to deer hunt all the time. Now I'll still go kill a deer and eat it, whatever. But not no, anywhere near. I don't focus on that like I used to.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot of things all the way through. But the road rage stuff, I don't, I'm glad we did this because you give me a lot of different things to think about.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
it's the things that I know I need to think about, but I don't always want to, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Because it makes it a pointed effort. Like I
Yeah.
have to get into my car thinking about, okay, I need to do this, this, and this to not get pissed off. I just want to think about getting there. Right. And
Yeah.
it just always happens. And this causes huge arguments with how I treat people. I ride people's ass too, get out of my way. And I got a Silverado that's lifted, so it's right in the back window. And if there's one thing that Chevrolet did in 2018 is they made their headlights too bright. The thing that jacks me up the most is when people bright like me and I've got it on low beam. What do? Boom, you get it all. I'll blind you, And it's not how I should be.
That's funny because I have the same exact truck.
Do you?
Yeah, and I get it all the time. I'll be, because I live in kind of a rural area, and I'll be cruising, and I've gotten to the point where I don't know if you have the fog lights on your truck too. They have the HID fog lights. So what I've done now is if I'm on like my neighborhood and I know that there'll be people out late at night, I'll actually turn my headlights off and just run with my HID fog lights because they're bright. They're as bright as like my car headlights. And just because I know that like, okay, I know that I'm going to come around this corner. I know I'm going to blind somebody with just these standard headlights, but I get the same way. I'm like, okay, you want to bright me? Here we go. Here's daylight. Here's daylight.
Let me hook that right up real quick.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to where I'm making a point to try to leave them on high so they can acknowledge the fact that I have dimmed my lights. So yes, they're still bright, but I did dim them, right? So I'm trying to use my high beams, but I don't need the high beams in that damn truck. I don't know what they've done, but man, if there's one thing, I just wish they would dim them a little bit because it makes me so mad. Like, because they're in their car. Oh, you don't want to dim your lights?
Yeah.
But that way, we're generating the response.
Well, and like you said, you talk about the reaction and response, and then just the situation awareness or like the intentionality, being very intentional. If you, I think we go through life so much without considering, what's happening or what's going on, and it's interesting that in the moments where you're not being intentional are the moments where things hit you out of the blue and then you have an adverse response or reaction and it gets out of hand pretty quick. But if you go into situations with more intention and you've decided, hey, road rage is kind of an issue for me and I don't really like the risk or the adverse possibilities of what could happen, and I don't like the way I feel later. I don't like that I can get that angry that quickly. And you decide that the next time you get in your truck, you're going to be intentional about it and be like, I don't care, short of a massive pileup and someone actually putting my life in danger on purpose. If someone's just being a dumbass or if someone's just being, oblivious, I'm going to just let that slide because who cares? I'm going to get to work. And if I'm constantly in a rush, then maybe the intentional thing is I need to leave my house 10 minutes early and give myself that buffer. I started doing that because I got a pretty decent commute to work and it takes me, over an hour to get there. And I would show up, upset because I was in a rush the whole way. Well, it takes me an hour to get there and I was leaving my house at 55 minutes before I needed to get there. So now I have to speed. And anyone that gets in my way it's now they're holding me up. But the reality is if it takes me an hour to get to work, I should be leaving an hour 15 and give myself a 15-minute buffer. So I show up and I got plenty of time to park. I got plenty of time to put my truck exactly where I want it, take a nice stroll into the office and do my thing and just be calm and chill. But that took awareness of myself and it took a lot of intention. But then I realized when I created that habit, how I just had less and less stress on a regular basis.
It's a bad way to start your day to get pissed off on the side end, right?
It's a really bad way.
It sets the tone for the entire day.
And I think when you talk about things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, and the stuff that we struggle with, a lot of it, I believe, we make worse for ourselves by continuing these bad habits over and over again and kind of building up that cortisol in our brain, or what's the word? Just, when you get like amped up, and it's just, if you consistently do that over and you consistently stress yourself out. I mean, picture doing that. You work Monday through Friday and you're stressed out those 5 days every day. At the end of the week, you're physically and mentally exhausted from that. That's just not good to do to your body.
It's horrible for it. And everything you're stressed about. Living in the moment is one of the things I always have struggled about, like, all the way through. It's what's going to happen next, or what are we going to do next, or what timeline are we on? Are we going to be late? It's constantly thinking about all these things. And that's what I've tried to work on a lot, is trying to live in the moment. And maybe I need to try to do that to road raids too, like do that and just chill out, find that one again. There's always going to be that one. And then, well, there he is. And then just keep going, just laugh it off and then keep going. Not let him win for the day. Right. It gives them too much power, like you said earlier.
Yeah, you nailed it right there. Don't let him win. You need to come out. You need to come out of every situation in life the victor. Don't let some stranger who doesn't know you, doesn't care about you, win the day and put you in jail, or worse, just because he wasn't paying attention.
You never know their name, and you're gonna let somebody have that much power over you, man. This is like an epiphany. Man, I'm glad this happened. So yeah, you'll never even know who they are, never meet them, probably never see them again, but then you let them ruin potentially time with your family, poor performance at work, any number of things, right?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. That's a different way to think about it.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. We'll continue our conversation offline. I'm gonna wrap up the podcast here, say goodbye to our viewers. But thanks again for watching Outside the Wire podcast. If you liked what you saw and you want to join in the discussion, make sure that you subscribe to the videos, share them, comment, engage in the conversation, let us know what you thought, and we'll talk to you again soon. Out.
Mayhem, this is Bravo 67 QRF. We are moving to contact exit gate 2. We are Oscar Mike.